So today I got like a co-host called Nathan Reed, and our guest is Vincent Williams. So Nate is really good at sports science, data collection, Olympic weightlifting, and in team sport. Nate, can you like introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah. So Nate Reed here. I got my master's degree at Carroll University under Dr. Tim Sycamel. Did a lot with sport science technology, velocity-based training, force plate, data collection, as well as a human performance coach for the women's basketball team there. Went on to University of Kentucky as an intern and a coaching assistant for Olympic sports, and later an assistant coach for women's basketball there. Now I'm at University of Louisville working under Adam Petway, men's basketball.
So, I actually like had a lot of like great conversation with Nate. We talk about like how he profile his athlete, how he do uh force velocity profiling, all those stuff, and force weight numbers, Olympic weightlifting. And so our guest is Vincent Williams. Can you like introduce yourself for the audience?
Yes, Vincent Williams, head strength and conditioning coach for men's basketball at the University of Pittsburgh.
Cool. So today we're gonna have some like question for you around like testing um and your experience. So Nate, why don't we start with I know you have some question about like his past experience, so why don't you start?
Yeah, Vincent. So I pulled up your timeline and I saw, you were at George Washington University and then you're a personal trainer at the White House for a little bit, which I want to ask you about. I thought that was really cool. And you went on to work at, University of Maryland. That's where my boss Adam worked at, and then went on to work at Coppin State as a director and the Wizards as a at the Go Go, the G League team, and went on to Rhode Island, and then coached with the Sixers. So you're really tenured, and then now you're at Pittsburgh. You touch on personal training at the White House. I thought that was really cool. I just want to hear about that.
Yeah, that was a that was a really interesting story. How I stumbled upon that one. So I'm from the we call it the DMV District, Maryland, Virginia, specifically Prince George's County in Maryland. I graduated from Towson University, got my bachelor's in exercise science there. So was looking for jobs, just like any other person post grad was just looking for a job. So it was a job posting, and all it said was exercise specialist, Washington D.C. Like that was the bare minimum. Like that's all the job posting said. And so obviously, I was like, okay, I fit the qualification, for this job. So I applied to it. So I applied. It didn't give you any indication that it was the White House. All it said was exercise specialist, Washington D.C. So about a month had passed, and my now former manager, she reached out. She called me, left a voicemail, and so I'm listening. And so she said, this is such and such from the White House Athletic Club, and so being from the area, like I knew pretty much every gym, every fitness center, and you know, it's like, well, let me Google. I've never heard this spot. Let me Google, to see, where this place is. And it wasn't available on Google either. Like you couldn't find it on Google. So I was like, oh, it was like this is fake. Like that job posting, it was fake. So I remember I told my sister about it. And so she was like, no, like you should call it back. She's like, sometimes things are like under the radar. So I wasn't going to call her back. I was like, this is fake, it's scam, whatever. So I call her back. And so like we're talking, we're, doing an introductory conversation. And she was like, yeah. And so like as I'm listening to her, I'm like, this is the actual White House. Like this is the fitness center at the White House. And so we get all the way to the end of the conversation, 10-minute conversation, we get all the way to the end, and she goes, and not she goes, I asked her, I said, so this is the fitness center at the White House. And she starts laughing. She's like, yeah, we can't really put it out there. I'm like, wow. So that was a really cool experience. I was there during the Obama administration. So I got to, experience a lot of cool things. I was there for 2 years. Yeah, it was there for 2 years after I had finished at Towson. So it was really cool.
Man, that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So how did you get from like the White House to uh working with basketball?
Yeah, so again, growing up in PG County, everyone plays basketball. If you know anything about PG County, there's a documentary out on Showtime called In the Water. So I grew up playing basketball, loved basketball, was always around basketball, So um, from moving from to answer your question, moving from the White House over to basketball, even when I was working at the White House, working as sort of like that personal trainer, exercise specialist role, I knew that was not something I wanted to do the rest of my career, right? So it's like this is cool, but looking ahead, 6 years out, 10 years out, I was like, I can't really see myself doing this. Like you finish school, I can't really see myself doing this for the rest of my career. So I had a friend of mine, Brandy Walker. So GW and the White House are like it's like a 10-minute walk from each other. So good friend of mine, Brandy Walker, she was at the George Washington University and she was an assistant strength coach. I reached out to her and I asked her, I said, are you guys taking interns? I would really like to come over and intern. My work schedule at the White House, I had like some huge gaps on certain days where I could get over, again, it's a 10-minute walk down the street to, well, go to GW, intern there 4 to 6 hours, finish there, walk to work, and still be at work on time. So that's when I started to make my transition from more so like gym pop and fitness over to more so basketball performance.
awesome. Would you be able to touch on maybe the transformation of your coaching philosophy, going from being a director at Coppin State and then having all that experience working in the NBA with the Go Go Wizards and the Sixers, and then being a director at Pittsburgh now?
Yeah, I think the one thing, well, for me, it always goes back to my time in Maryland. To the 2 years I spent there under Kyle Tarr. I'm sure you guys work at Adam. I'm sure you guys get a lot of Kyle stories as well. Just being able to just be under that for that level. He's such a master of what he does. So just being under that for 2 years gave me such a really, really good foundation. And the thing about it was, it's like I was an intern in college, but we were so ahead of the curve in what we were doing from training to nutrition to sports science to just everything that we did, just how to be a good strength coach, how to communicate with your head coach, seeing it up close for 2 years, like having that foundation, it allowed me to go college. It allowed me to go pro and still have success, no matter which environment I was in. So getting the principles from that internship and then, okay, yes, you're in college now, but okay, how do you take, like, what was the meat and potatoes of what you did at Maryland? How can you have success at Coppin? Okay, and then now you're moving over to the G League team, right? So, when I had the when I was the head strength coach for the Go Go, I was the first strength coach in franchise history, right? So I'm gonna always have that on my resume. Like I took over, like I think I started a week before our first game. So like being able to just be literally just be dropped in, they had already had training camp and basically figuring it out on the fly. Like I couldn't like the G League, it wasn't what it was and it wasn't what it is now with the boom of social media. Like you're able to reach out, connect with other G League strength coaches, like you're kind of figuring it out on the fly, right? So to me, again, it goes back to Maryland. Okay, well, this is what the meat and potatoes what we did in Maryland. This is the meat, like this is how we need to set up our organization, set up our program here with the go-go, right? And then, each stop I've made is just growing, taking taking experiences again, obviously from a cop and taking experiences from a go-go, Rhode Island. Okay, what is the environment like in Rhode Island? How can I draw on past experience to make this successful, to make it look like how I want it to look, and then just progression from then on.
Awesome. You're talking about advancement of technology in Maryland. Can you touch on maybe you guys have force plate back then? Did you have any VBT or
Yeah, no VBT, no force plate. We did do GPS monitoring, so we had Zephyr. So back then we had Zephyr. We had Omega Wave when I was at Maryland as well. So we had Zephyr and we had Omega Wave. And then we didn't have force plates. We did not have VBT, but those were our two main sort of sports science applications that we used when I was in Maryland. But then from that standpoint, reporting, like how do you report to a coach? Like coaches reporting, what do they like to see? What are the things you want to highlight from a certain practice, to give to a coach, so that a coach can, so we can help kind of give a framework for practice, depending on where we're on the season, how guys look and things of that nature.
awesome?
So so from at that days you were at Maryland and until now, like I know Pitt is probably have like force wave velocity based training, right? So do you think that kind of changed how you uh coach, changed how you program?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we all like resources, right? So going from Maryland, again, we had like our GPS, was Zephyr. Our monitoring was Omega Wave, right? So then you go from there, you go to a lower level D1 where you don't really have the resources, right? So at Coppin, yeah, we didn't have sports science tech, but you still want to have the principles, right? So it's okay if we're this far out from a game, like like we were like at Coppin, we would play 2 games in 3 days. So we would play Saturdays and Mondays, right? So okay, so coach, this is how practice should look. We didn't call it -3 when I was at Coppin, but it was literally -3. Okay, this is what practice should look like. This is how we should build up to a game day. This is what the day in between should look like, so we can practice again, so we can play again, be ready to play again on Monday. Tuesday off. Wednesday, Thursday, build up to Friday. So it forces you to think, right? Like when you don't have the tech, it forces you to think, right? So like you have again when you don't have it, it forces you to think, right? So then when you actually do get the technology, so now going from a Coppin State to G League with the Wizards, like we're in the Wizards facility, now you're able to understand the concept so much and not be so heavily reliant on data, right? Nothing against it, but and it's good to have it because it helps confirm, what you see with your eye, right? So like it forces you to be really in depth with your eye, right? So then, obviously you go to the Wizards, you have an abundance of data, right? You got force plates, you got VBT, you got like you had it all, right? So then you go from there, and then you go to Rhode Island, right? Like again, it's not again, this is a mid-major. We have like that was my first time with Hawk and force plates, right? Like they were there when I got there. So it forced me to okay, now how do I integrate these into what we're doing to make us better as a program, right? Not just saying, I don't need them. I've never used them before, so I'm not going to need them. No, this is a tool we can use, right? So that was when I got really good at using Hawkman, right? So we would jump every day, again, like we all do. We talk to Drake, hey Drake, help me out with this, like what does this number mean? What does this number mean? I had never used force plates before, right? So, what do I need to do? How can this help us? So we have force plates in Rhode Island, then going from Rhode Island back into the NBA with Philly. We didn't have Hawking, but we still have force plates, right? So the metrics are the metrics. Okay, well, we jump guys. Okay, this number means this. This number means this. This number means this. How often do you guys test? Figuring out the flow of that organization, right? And then again, drawing on your past experience. Now you get to pit. You basically have everything you had in the past. We have EBT, we have GPS, we have force plates. You know, we have it all now. Oh, okay, I'm very familiar with all of these things, and it's not just a tool, but it's the application of the tool. Right now that I have experience with. Okay, so we have Hawking specifically at Pitt. Okay, very familiar with that. Okay, this is my first time using Catapult, but I've used Connexon in the past. I've used GPS in the past. Okay, so these are the things that I know help me in my programming and what we need to pay attention to on Catapult. What are these metrics? Like, what is metric A? Okay, this is you guys. You know, you're drawing your past experience. Okay, this is this metric from Connexon. Okay, yeah, we need that. You know, so we came that process. So I had to learn Catapult. We have GymAware at Pitt. We had GymAware, and I was in Philly. Easy, you know, easy transition there, right? So getting the Pitt, yeah, like now you have the full abundance of resources. Again, you have familiarity with it. You know what you need from each application. You know, so then you're able to build your program and you get the Pitt.
So, um, you kind of mentioned that at the with all those with the resources at the beginning you didn't like quite know how to implement it and you kind of like get familiar with it.
Mhm.
Um, is that process like hard? Can you like describe the process? How did you get familiar with like different tools and like I know at the first you need to like develop your eyes. So how does those like match get together?
Yeah. So we're talking like Coppin, like when we didn't have, is that we're talking like Coppin State.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
So you were saying So like you were saying, like when we didn't have as many resources. So we're talking like what was the process
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in a
yeah,
Copper
yeah,
State? Got you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, yeah, that was my first time calling the shots. So not sports science aside, it was calling shots of everything, right? Like you're training the guys, you're talking to the coach, you're you know planning out meals on the road. Like you're like I was doing everything, right? So for me, what I had to learn about myself is like I'm a very system oriented guy, right? So like I'm not like I have OCD, so like everything has to like make sense for me, right? So what I started to do then, and like even what I do now, is like put systems in place to where it's almost like a fail safe. Like okay, like if we do A, B, and C, usually X will happen, right? Like we know, like it leads to this, right? So then when something that doesn't happen, oh, we missed B, oh, we missed D, oh, we missed A. Now I can kind of help. It helps me with the decision making process. Okay, all right, well, we need to tighten up this area. We need to tighten up this area, and that was across the board. That was in training. That was in sports science at that point. That was in nutrition. You know, so just putting checks and balances in place. And then again, you know, you learn from your mistakes always, right? It's like it's not a what's the saying? It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Like okay, learning day in and day out, year after year, you know, month to month, you know, like okay, how can we get better in this area? How can we get better in this area? You know, reevaluating. Oh, we weren't as good in this area. You know, okay, like how can we tighten it up? You know, so it was a process for sure. You know, and then you just want to have you just keep building on your philosophy and the things you've been taught. You know, when you first started out, and you make it work for the situation that you're in.
Can you share some like maybe like you mentioned some mistake you had And how did that one help you grow as a coach, as a sports scientist?
Yeah, I would say for me, I think the one mistake I made early on that I've learned from is doing nothing is never the answer, right? Like I know that like we're coaches, right? But like for me, like yes, they are like they're high level athletes, no matter where you're at, NBA, college, like these are some of the best athletes, right? And I believe Mike Thomas said it on the Pivot podcast. He's like, you can't run away from coaching, right? Like I think sometimes as coach, like we are in place to give athletes guidance, right? And it's not so much that you're pushy with the guidance that you're giving, but you have to have an answer ready, right? Like not just you mean, oh, they'll figure it out. Like that's not an approach that's an approach that I've learned isn't the best approach. Not saying that you are always on top of them and saying you have to do X, but you have to have something in place for each individual athlete. And I think that's one area that I've gotten better with is okay, well, even if they don't like A, have B, C, and D ready for them, right? Like as opposed to, well, they don't like A. Well, okay, sorry, they don't like A. Well, like if you don't like A, the A is the only way to go about it. Like that's not conducive to success, right? Because then they look at you like, well, you're supposed to help me, right? Just because I don't like A, it's like, and then for me, I think like sometimes coaches like it's like you become it becomes like a personal attack, like, oh, he doesn't trust me, yada yada yada. It's like, no, like it's just a way to make you better, right? Because the one thing I learned when you get to the NBA, not only do you have B, C, and D, you need to have E, F, G, the whole letters of the alphabet, because those guys, they are really elite at what they do, right? And if you want them to have some buy-in to what you're trying to give them, the guidance you're trying to give them, if you just say, well, this is the only way to do it, well, they're going to ask you why. You better be ready to tell them why, because they've made it to that level not having to do this thing necessarily sometimes. You need to have a B and a C and a D. And then when you get to a college level, it helps you to think because not even a college level, it just forces you to think as a coach because you're always flexible, right? So like you're never put into a box where it's like, oh, well, okay, now how do I think outside the box? I'm in this situation. Well, I can't do A, and then you're kind of handcuffed because you can't do A. Well, when I was at X place, this really worked that time. And now we're here, this really worked. And I thought about this, and then we flipped it this way, yada, yada, yada. When you're changing environments like that, it forces you to think outside the box as opposed to just being in one environment year after year after year after year. You're gonna stay at the same hotel, you're gonna travel this way, you're gonna practice this way, like dealing with different coaches and different athletes, like I have been like I'm fortunate to have had a job, number one. But once you're being in multiple situations, you learn different personalities and how people do different things and how this every situation is different and you learn to think to how to make that environment successful. And then when you get to a spot like I am now, it's like, okay, you've gone past success again. That worked here, that worked there, that worked there. You just have like this Rolodex of just ideas, and it's like there's nothing to where you feel like you're handcuffed in a certain situation because you've been forced to be flexible in the past.
Yeah, very good tips. Um, you touched on the application and technology. Could you go in on the communication of how you went about using that technology and communicating to key stakeholders? For
Mm-hmm.
example, I think I remember Nick Potter of Duke University talking about at the Catapult Conference at Louisville, how he communicated
Mm-hmm.
with Coach K and how he liked more tangible things and how he liked to, read a newspaper every day. So might be something you could touch on. You guys play Duke tonight, so um,
Yeah, well, I'll go back to like every coach is different, right? So like you got to learn your coach, and not just from a reporting standpoint, but just learn them as a person, right? Like how how do you communicate with your coach? Like some coaches are more introverted, some coaches are more extroverted, right? Like learning I guess the soft skills of your coach, right? Like do they have a family? Do they not have a family? Right? Like what do they like to do for fun? Like what does their daily routine look like? Like learning all those things about your coach. And then that help makes reporting very, very, very that it helps make reporting it simplifies your reporting, right? So like when I was in the G League, I work with one coach, Ryan Richmond, great guy. We met every morning, like on the road like we met every morning, and he wanted me a part of the meeting. Cool, right? So like now that makes reporting even way more simpler, right? Like, and it's not that not one coach versus another. It's just each coach is different in in their temperament and how they like to organize things. So Ryan, we met as a staff every morning, right? So like whether it was a game day morning or was a practice morning, like we met every morning, and he would send out the practice plan like at like 7 o'clock the night before. And I know a lot of strength coaches are gonna watch this and be like, "What? He sent out the practice plan the night before?" Yeah, like it gave you a lot of time, and he wanted your feedback when you came to practice the next morning. Like, but that's Ryan, right? But the mistake you make is when you go from Ryan, right? Like if I'm going to work with Coach Capel now, and I'm expecting, well, Ryan did it this way. Well, Ryan's not Coach Capel, right? Like it's different, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And again, it's not about me. It's about making each environment successful. I learned about Coach Capel. He's a family man. He's got 3 kids. He's got like at the time, Ryan wasn't married. Since then he's now got kids and he's got a wife now. But Coach Cable's been doing this for a long time, right? So he has a certain way that he likes to do things. And so I had to figure out about Coach. Okay, if I just text him, right, hey coach, watch this, watch this, watch this. Boom, done. He's all right, got you. And he always responds, right? He always responds. So like all we have like a simple JPEG image that we send them. This is how hard practice was. This was the distance we covered. This was the intensity, right? And then what we do at the beginning of each week is we send out just so, and it's not even like to where like, hey, don't do this. It's like just so we're all on the same page. Like our breakdown, because and especially since we're in conference play now, our breakdown is very, very regimented at this point. You're gonna have 2 days before your first game, and you're gonna have 2 days in between your next game, right? It's only so much you can do, right? There's only so much you can do. So it's okay. This day is gonna be this day is gonna be this, game day, the next day is gonna be this, the day before the second game is gonna be this. We're gonna play the second game, off, boom. Right. That's the schedule, right? So for that standpoint, there was much more communication, I would say, in the preseason. Like when you have like those 20 practices and you're trying to like you might have an off day here, like the schedule might flip for whatever reason. So there's much more communication in the preseason. But all we send them is a JPEG. This is what you need to know. This is what we did. Let me know if you have any questions. Like it's so like and like this is my second season with them. So like we're kind of locked in. We both know what to expect, right? I know what to expect, on X day, you know, however the schedule, like I know now, right? So but like last year there was more communication where, hey, how do you like this? How do you like this? Do you want this look this way? Coming into this year, totally different team, same coach Capel. So you tweak it to where, okay, hey, we can do a little bit more here. We got more guys on the roster, whatever, 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 and then you just tweak it, but you keep the format the same, right? All right, he still likes his image, he can see it, boom, he gets his 3 key data points, boom, he's done, right? Like he's going to go about how he goes about it, right? On the backside, I know, okay, he's probably going to do this, this, and this. I need to be ready for whatever else. We need to make sure this guy's doing this. We make sure this guy's doing that because I know he's going to go in this direction on this day, so forth and so on, right? So for him, it is tangible, but it's a JPEG image. Boom, you just text it to him. It doesn't have to be like a report. I'm not, holding the iPad in front of him after every practice. Is boom, here's these 3 data points. He looks cool, gotcha, and we move on.
So, I know like there's like all those sport techs like catapult, force weight that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically our job to understand all these like data, all these metrics, but communicating with head coach, communicating with coaching staff is another story because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have this and probably they don't need to have this. So, um, was the is there any time you find, or maybe at the start of the process, the communication wasn't that easy? How did you like build buy-in for the coaches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and that is really funny you say that. I was on Instagram and the NBA Strength Coach Association, they've been doing a really good job, like highlighting the coach. And the guy I used to work for, Tador Pandolf, he was talking about the importance of knowing the sport, right? So it's like, to me, I've never really I've had to learn sports science more than I've had to learn basketball. Like, I know basketball, right? To me, I've had to learn, okay, this metric means this as far as the sport. This metric means this metric means this, as opposed to the reverse, right? So like for me, like I can talk pick and roll coverages with our players, right? To me, honestly, if I'm being real, I feel like I have a better grasp of that than actual sports science, right? So to me, it's kind of been the reverse. Like I'm talking, transition offense and pick and roll coverages with our players, and then it's trying to find a way to integrate sports science into that, if that makes sense. So it's really, really important that you know your sport, you know the verbiage, you know the terminology, right? Um, and then going about it from that standpoint, right? And if you don't, then it can be a dialogue. Okay, help me understand, right? Because that's what I had to do. Like our sports science fellow Heather Betancourt, she's great. Like she's helped me a lot, right? Like okay, tell me like what this means, right? Like tell me, like help me, right? And you got to humble yourself. Hey, tell me what this means, and then I'll listen to it. She does a great job explaining it, and then I start to, oh, okay, got it, right? So whichever side of the spectrum you're on, you have to humble yourself one way or the other. You have to humble yourself one way or the other so that you can help better understand, so that you can mesh the two, right? So like, hey, I know basketball, I know our coverages. So like when I first start working with a coach, I'm in practice and I'm trying to learn, okay, what do we call, like what is our verbiage, right? So that like one suggestion I made to coach, I was looking at like we had our first scrimmage and I was looking at like in the scrimmage we hit a certain amount of one metric, right? And he asked me, and I was like, yeah, like we should try to implement more X, but I didn't talk metrics with him. I just talked the drill. Like we should do more of X drill, and then boom, that automatically covers the metric that I'm trying to get across, as opposed to saying we need more. We need more max velocity sprints, right? Like he did, like you lost him automatically, because he's either going to do one or two things. He's going to say, okay, gotcha, and he's not going to do it. Or some coaches, which is good, they'll say, okay, what does that mean? Right? Some coaches will just completely write you off if you say, I need more max velocity. If you just say, yeah, we need more transition segments, boom, done. Right? Because like you kind of check both boxes. Like you get your metric and you get, the buy-in from the coach. Oh, you're actually paying attention in practice. You understand what's going on and you get that buy-in, right? As opposed to, we need more of this. And you give them the metric name, they want to look at you and they say, all right, got it. And they really don't got it. Right. And then you walk away thinking like, oh, like you got it. And it's like, no, he has no clue. And then you're watching the next 3, 4 practices trying to figure out when your max velocity segments are going to come in. They're never going to come in because you didn't understand what you said, right? So that's kind of how it works. Like you have to understand like your program, your team, your philosophy. You have to understand that, and then go back. Because there are a lot more people who are way smarter than me who do understand the metrics. I just happen to know basketball. So it makes it easy.
Nice. So, did you really told the coach to suggest the coach that we need to do more? Because I know there's like, I mean, we like certain coaches actually sometimes actually want to do less. But
Yeah.
recently I talked to different strength coaches. They kind of did the same thing that they said like maybe they're suggesting maybe coaches should do something more what drill like
Mm-hmm.
maybe yeah. So what was the process of that?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to the relationship with the coach, right? Like he trusts me, right? Like there's a trust level between me and Coach Cable, right? So where it's like he's open to my suggestion, right? So and again, this was preseason, right? So like we have been ramping up, we're ramping up, right? And if your job as a strength coach is to have your team prepared for competition, right? Like that's my job. Like it's not. And one thing Coach Kibadell loves, one of his sayings, is it's never personal, right? Like it's never like I'm attacking you, I'm attacking your philosophy. It's like no, we're trying to win. Like in the day, we're trying to win, right? So it's like if you see something, like you have to speak to that. Like, hey, we need more of this. We need more of that, right? So I'm not going to completely divulge, what it was, but in this certain time and space, we needed more of that, right? Like we were doing a lot, and it wasn't more, and it could have been like, hey, yeah, it could have been a conversation of we need more of X and less of Y, right? But just in my brain, like we were deficient in this one area, and I could have said, hey, if we could do less of this and more of Y, but we definitely needed more of this one certain segment, right? Because we were kind of deficient in the area to get us ready for games. But again, we had a whole year of data, right, to look at. We're like, like we're practicing hard, we're practicing well, but like we really need to make sure we address this one area to make sure that we're fully confident and prepared, to play.
Cool. So that's probably enough for the sports science topic. I know
Mm-hmm.
um Nate has some like testing question, like especially one-arm testing for you. Nate, can you like shoot the questions?
Yeah. So kind of pivoting more towards training philosophy. I heard Lauren Green talk about one rep max testing at the Pittsburgh seminar that I attended last year. He talked about the positive effects of it being output, technical proficiency, some other things, and then negative aspect would be, that he said that skill improvement doesn't necessarily equal strength. What are your thoughts on using 1RM testing, or if you like to do 3RM testing, and your ideology behind it?
Yeah. We don't want our M test. We don't. The way that I go about it is I'm always thinking safety and availability. Like that's always at the forefront, right? So the way I go about it is we do train heavy, we do train light, and we do train in 3 dimensions. Like that's kind of our wheelhouse. As far as 1RM, 3RM, the way I prescribe our loads, I treat a 3RM as a 1RM, right? So if I'm prescribing loads for a guy and um, I want a guy to do, 85% on Hatfield squat and I want him to do sets of 3, right? The way I have it on my laptop when I prescribe the loads, like whatever I see as um like uh say they're doing 315, like we'll just say like 315 is their 1RM. I trickle it down to where it's actually a 3RM. So if that percentage is like, I think it's only a percent difference of like 5%. But to me, it gives me like a comfort level of like, okay, like we're training heavy, but we're not training too heavy, right? And then when we come back on the backside and we do our IMTP testing and we do our force plate testing, and we're seeing progression in peak force, time to peak force and all that, and we see the positive trends that we're always looking for, I'm good, right? So it's like that check recheck type deal. It's like, okay, well, and the thing about it is like I've been doing it to the point now where I'm comfortable with it, right? And then like that's one of the good part about having again now you have resources to like you can really be finite with what you're testing. So it's like now, oh, okay, no, we are actually getting stronger, right? Like yeah, we are getting the trends that we're looking for, right? So but yeah, like I don't put a lot of stock into like, okay, today we're testing 3 rep max. Let's go. Right. Like it's more of like an ongoing type deal because of the technology that we have. And again, that's one of the things like when you talk about how you can kind of infuse it into your program, it's like, oh, like now like when like my earlier days, we still didn't do 1RM, but there was much more of a okay, we're going to test 3RM today, like, and like that's kind of how you framed the program like that because you couldn't INTP, right? It's just what it was. So like you might put more stock into that, but like now with technology, you can be safer with how you program, right? Like not again, not knocking it, but you can, right? Like okay, we have this check in place, we have this check in place. Are we seeing the trends that we want to see? We are. Okay, cool. I'm good. You know, that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah, definitely a good point. I think when you think basketball, the in season is the biggest training block. So having,
Yeah,
velocity,
yeah,
usually look at fluctuations of an athlete's wellness, maybe. So
absolutely. Like, and not to cut you off, but like this off season in particular, like it was really like I've never experienced an off season like this because like one, the way Pitt like we're on a quarter system, I believe. So like our summer started like Memorial Day, like before we started before Memorial Day, right? And then on top of that, we had a foreign tour. So
hmm.
like I've been with the guys for a long like we started like we like made the tournament. We started 2 weeks after we lost in the tournament, which was like April. So like April, we trained for 4 weeks. Then we took like a 2 week break, and then we were back like the third week in May. So we were gone third week in May. We went our 10 weeks, right? And then you get the 10 practices, right? So like now, like we went literally second week in May to second week in August, which is only extremely long training block, right? And then we took 2 weeks off after our foreign tour, and then we're back into the preseason. So like we were constantly doing stuff, you know what I mean? So like you had to be really judicious because we still got 8 weeks left, So it's like you're trying to make sure you're gradually building guys up to where you're not burning the candle at both ends. Like, oh, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. Like, well, at the same time, like we're gonna be here extra 2 weeks because of our foreign tour. They're gonna play or travel and do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And then you just completely lose sight of, oh, we actually have a season to play.
Yeah,
Like how do you account for that? So like margin for us this off season is extremely huge. Just to make sure guys are constantly progressing the right way and we're not burning the candle at both ends.
yeah, definitely unique in basketball, making sure you're trying to fill the buckets, but not
Yeah,
too much.
yeah, yeah. Like Coach Caple, he was saying the other day, he was like basketball is in the college setting. He was like basketball is the only 2 semester sport. I thought like, well, yeah, like like you forget about it because you're in it. Like you're just so used to doing the job, and then you like he said it. I'm like, hey, he's right. Like, and if you count summers, a 3 semester sport, like we're like all year round we're going, like we're doing something, like so like football, they play in the fall, their season's done, they go home, then they come back and they train, and it's like, but like we play games on both sides of the semesters, which means you have to prepare, in those semesters, so it's interesting.
When when you got like when you have the experience to go to the NBA uh and then go to college setting, uh dealing with players, do you find like any difference between training pro athletes and training like college level athletes?
Yeah. Well, the NBA is really young now. Like the NBA is really young, and college is really old. So in the last 5 to 10 years, like the dynamics have shifted to like especially in college, COVID year, transfer rules. Like guys are playing like 6 years of college basketball, right? And then on the NBA side, like guys are playing like 1 year of college, 2 years of college, and then the NBA. So it's like, okay, like to me, it just enhanced the importance of training the athlete that's in front of you. Like you can't say I'm in college, I'm in pro. You can't do that anymore because like I've had guys like the team we had at Pitt last year. The guys I was training were older than the guys I was training in Philly the year before. Like you know what I'm saying? I had one guy in Philly. He had did 1 year of college, and another guy I'm thinking about, two other guys I'm thinking about, they had did like 1 or 2 years of college. So that's a three to combined between three guys. They had played 3 to 4 years of college basketball between three guys, and they're in the NBA, right? They're in the NBA, and then the college guys I had last year, four of them think about in particular, they all played at least 5 years of college basketball, each one. So now you're talking the difference between 4 years of college and 15, right? So you like to me, I had to like you can't think, oh, I'm in college. Now, as far as like the way you set up your program and you set up how things run, that's totally different. But like as far as training an athlete, like you have to train the athlete that's in front of you. You have to account for training like each individual athlete, like you kind of have to have a profile of how you go about assessing them, right? And it can't be dependent upon NBA or pro because my pros were younger than my college guys, in the 2 year span. So it just enhanced that significance for me.
Yeah, I never really thought of that. Some
Yeah,
NBA guys being like 18 years old coming in, and then you got a 23-year-old senior in college who's just like
exactly.
pushing max
Yeah,
strength like no other, maybe.
yeah. Like okay, like again, and I'm speaking from my perspective, right? Like I was an assistant strength coach, so the way we divvied out our players, I had all the younger guys. I had two coaches ahead of me. They trained more of the veteran guys, right? So like I didn't really have to worry about too much about training veterans because I had the younger guys. But from watching them train their guys who were, 6 year pros, 6 years and up, for 4 to 6 years and up, like honestly, it was the same. Like if I'm being totally honest, like you still train heavy, you train fast, and you train in 3 points of motion. That was the crux of what we did, right? So like it looked in a lot of ways look the same now. Your older guys, like now you're talking like 8 years plus, they probably went for like a more functional approach with those guys. Like they're still loading them. And then like your guys who are like in between, like it's like to me, at the end of the day, it always came back down to a needs analysis, right? Like if you got a guy who's 8 years, he's played 8 years in NBA, he probably doesn't need the max training. He probably doesn't. He's playing 30 minutes a game and all that good stuff. Like Like he probably doesn't need the max playing. Your guys who are in between, who aren't playing as many minutes, you know they're going to play. We call them low minute games. So like they're not getting as many minutes. They're going to play in the low minute games. So they're addressing conditioning. Do they need to train max playing? Do they not need to train max playing? Like, did they come from they need a heavy strength training background, or like they might be an international guy and they've never really trained before? Yeah, you might need to get them stronger, right? But you might have an international guy who's played 6+ years or 4+ years in the NBA who still needs the max training. You know what I'm saying? Because his training background when he was international, he didn't really do it. So just because he's in the NBA doesn't mean you don't max train him. Right? He needs it. Like that's like what's going to help him become a better basketball player because he doesn't have that background, doesn't have that foundation. So you do need to do that, right? And you can't just say, "Oh, like he's an NBA player," yada yada yada. Again, making assumptions about guys, right? Like like I was talking about earlier, one of the mistakes you can make as a strength coach is saying, "Oh, like they'll figure it out." It's like, no, like this is what he needs. You're the coach. Don't run from coaching. This is what he needs. Let's address it. You know, so it's like the dynamics, college and pro now is so different. Like before, like when I was in Maryland, like we knew we would have, like we were planning on having certain guys, like at least for, like not at, I won't say at least. When I was in Maryland, we were planning on having guys for 4 years. Like there was no transfer portal, there was no NIL, there was none of that. Like when you got a guy day one, you could project out, okay, I'm gonna probably have this guy for 4 years. Let's take this a step at a time, right? Like you kind of had an idea of where you wanted them to look. Now you're pretty much training a guy year to year. Like not happy with their minutes, they can jump in the portal. They if you're at a mid-major level and they play out of their mind, they want to go up to a higher level. Like you might have for 1 year, you might be in the NBA, and you might have a guy who only played college in 1 year. Like he's only played 1 year of college, and that 1 year that he played in college, like this is the other, like again, like it's so nuanced. Like you might have a guy who played in college for a year, but he didn't do any summer training. Like he just got there like the last month, right? So he missed the whole summer because he was doing Team USA, right? So he got there the late part of the summer, and he just jumps right in the preseason, and then it's just preseason practice, 30 games. He's in the draft. Like he hasn't really trained.
Do you
You know,
do
like it's
you uh do you train your athletes like group individuals or as a team? It's just
we
something that
group,
popped in my head.
we group,
Group
yeah.
them.
So like this summer we grouped our guys. So like the guys that I had, like so the guys I had right like in the spring, they're much further ahead than the guys I got in the summer because I had like a whole month with them, right? And then the guys I have in the summer, they they're on a certain level, and then the guys who I had like that month, they're basically a month ahead, right? They're a month ahead in their training, so like their training looks much different than the guys. There are some similarities, but some of the lifts that they're doing, depending on how long I've had them, look different.
Kind of like the same philosophy, but you might have an orientation, might not lift.
Say that one more
Right.
time.
Right. Like overall, it's the same philosophy, but a newcomer might have to go through an orientation process, maybe. At
Exactly.
Kentucky with Olympic sports, they had a 13-week orientation process, very extensive for Olympic lifts. Um, you know, so is that something you guys might do too?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like, and then like, so like, take like the crop of new guys that we got. Two of them had played college basketball for 3 years, and then three of them were freshmen. So how do you account for that, right? So for me, with it being a group, what I just said was, okay, I'm gonna start all y'all on the same level. We're just gonna zero this thing out. I'm gonna start all you on the same level, and we're gonna see how fast you progress, right? Like, again, I'm very, very fortunate. I only have 15 guys. If I can't assess that this guy is progressing faster than this guy in the weight room, I'm doing something wrong, right? So it's like, let's start everyone here. Oh, okay. The two guys who have played college basketball before have separated themselves. Oh yeah, was expecting that, right? Okay, here, you guys can handle that. And then my guys who are younger, right? The three freshmen, right? Well, one of the freshmen has like he might have prepped a year, where they actually strength train it. Oh, okay, you got a little bit more. Boom, here you go. Right. So it's like it's different. You know what I'm saying? Like you still are accounting for each individual guy, but you might start them if they are grouped. You might all start them here just for sake of flow, like within a weight room, within a program, and then over the course of 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, you kind of separate them as you kind of build out that program. So like now, where you're in season, like now there's like clear distinctions of where guys are at, based on, and it's not even now it's not even based on training history, it's based on minutes. Like you're constantly accounting for all these different factors. Like you might have had a guy who started here, progressed here, and then he's not playing as many minutes. So now you can really do more with him, right? And then you might have a guy who started here, stayed here, but you need him for 20 plus minutes a night. So now you got to kind of make sure you gear, make sure he's ready for that, stimulus as opposed to a training stimulus.
For sure. You talked about, everything revolves around the needs analysis per athlete. I saw you have your FMS certification. Is that something that you
Yeah,
utilize um, running athletes through using a functional movement screen? I know there's an SFMS nowadays,
yeah.
or some coaches like to just look at the warm up, maybe look at leg swings, something. How do you go about assessing the needs analysis?
I don't. So I don't do FMS like I, I heard one strength coach say, excuse my language, he said a bastardized version. So my FMS now is a bastardized version, but it's more for my traditional lifts, if that makes sense. And then what I'll use is the 3D maps for our functional side. How does a guy move and function? Right. So it's like kind of a splitting of the two. Right. So it's like, okay, to me, FMS is really good for like the way I've framed it in my brain is really good for being able to program the traditional lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, right? And then the way I need to assess a guy in function to make him a better basketball player, I'll use 3D maps. So like our assessment is kind of a hodgepodge of the two, if that makes sense. So I'm not again, like as you get older, like you kind of do away with like what you sat and learned, like you kind of make your own. Like it's part of the fun part to me about being a coach, like you kind of make your own stuff. So like that's kind of what I've done. It's like okay, we'll take the deep squat, we'll take the inline lunge, we'll take rotary stability, and then I'll take you know anterior chain, posterior chain from 3D maps and kind of make up my own assessment to see what I need to see in order to be able to write a program for a guy.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes more applicable when it's might
Yeah,
take the time to go through FMS, whole team.
absolutely, absolutely. Like too like again, like I always try to speak about what I do because I know it's not common amongst strength coaches. Like I have 15 guys, like right. So it's like, and I have them for a full calendar year. So like I've kind of built it out where I know, okay, this first week is gonna be light. We're gonna do a lot of assessment, body comp, all that stuff. Okay, this second week is like actually when we're gonna really start training. Like you know the schedule from coach, like you know the flow, the environment, everything. You kind of build everything out. So it makes it much more seamless. Even though it is pretty nuanced because you're trying to address the needs of each individual guy, and then like you might see something in the weight room that you didn't see on an assessment, and you make an adjustment. Like you can make adjustments on the fly because it's just you and a guy. A lot of times, it's like it's you and I try to keep it like yeah. Sometimes we'll have a full team of 15. Yeah, I'm not saying we don't, but like I try to keep it pretty individualized. So like there's no more than like 6 guys in the room at a time. You can kind of see how stuff is going.
We talk about like technology, we talk about like movement assessment, and with all those or like body comp you mentioned, with all those like assessment tests, it's gonna be a lot like mental or psychological stress for the athlete. So how do you like manage like when to do, when not to do?
Yeah, great question. I try to get all of my stuff done early to where like once basketball starts, I want them thinking about basketball. So it's like we're trying to get all of the stuff we talked about, we're trying to get it done like first 2 weeks minimum. Like when they step on campus, we're trying to get it done first 2 weeks. And then like once like literally once the season starts, like once the first official practice starts, I'm done with all that stuff. Like I don't want you thinking about it. Right. Like I want you thinking about, what we have to do to win. So like once the first official practice starts, boom, we're done with that stuff. Like now sometimes you have like a return to play situation, your guy gets hurt, all that stuff you might have to do with, in those situations. But like as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to get everything done by first official practice. So that once the first practice starts, boom, it's just basketball.
So how often do you guys implement like force play testing right now, or
Mhm.
like you mentioned isometric mid typo right now?
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually have a pretty cool model where our guys come in the weight room every day. One of the things I really liked about being in Philly was like the flow of guys coming through the weight room. Like even if you're not like lifting that day, just the mental check in of like, is a guy awake? Did he sleep last night? Has he had breakfast? So like one of the things I try to do is like, okay, we have practice at 1. We kind of have rolling times to where guys come in and do their activation, flexibility, mobility. If it is a lift that day, they do their lift within like a 20-25 minute segment. Boom, they go from that. Our training room is connected to our weight room. They can go right through the training room, get tape, and then boom, they're on the court and they're getting up shots, right? So it's like guys are like shooting constantly for like a good 15 minutes before practice. Now that conditions our warm up. Now that enhances our flow of getting into practice. So like we don't have to have a longer, elongated warm up because guys are pretty loose. They're feeling pretty good, leading into practice. So like, that's one of the things, that we've done. I get their class schedule. Okay, this guy gets out 11:50. Can you get here at 12:15? Right, our campus is pretty big. It's the downtown campus. Can you get here about 12:15? Yeah, you might be 5 minutes late. I'm cool with that. We're in season. Get here, get warmed up. Hop in the cage. Hit your activation stuff. We have your lift set up. Knock out your lift. Boom, you flow right into practice. Just kind of help keep that constant flow. So with that, our guys jump every day. So like they come through, they'll, you know, they'll hit all of their stuff, activation series, all that stuff, warm up stuff, lift, whatever. And then last thing they do before they step on the court is they jump and we give them their catapult if they ever like sometimes guys will come in before their lift and they'll get up top for the coach. So they'll come grab their catapult, then they'll come back lift, and then we'll jump them and then, so it's kind of a flow now that we have. But yeah, we try to jump. Basically we jump them every day. And then I'm sorry, you asked about IMTP, and then IMTP will do that. The last IMTP we have is right before conference play starts. So we'll IMTP twice in the summer, once when they return, and then the last one is right before conference play. So we'll do like 4 within a matter of 6 months.
That was cool. That was cool. I like it. So I think that's all the question we have for today. So if there's like coaches who are really interested in what we are talking about today, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram like everybody else. Vincent Williams, CSCS. That's my Instagram handle. I don't know if anyone emails anymore, but if you want to send me an email, that's cool too. Williams, CSCS at gmail.com.
All right.
All right, thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time.
No problem, guys.